Hey guys, welcome to today's episode of the Top Producing Zone podcast. I'm your host, Michael Jin.
And I'm Shane Carvalho, your co-host.
We have a fun topic for you lined up today, and it's a really important one because as real estate agents, we're always focused on grinding, trying to grow and scale our business. But one thing that we sometimes forget is that it's also important to just find balance with our lives, supplementing the business and all the time we're putting into the business with other things, fun activities, self-care, just to make sure that we're living the type of life that we want.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. And honestly, this is a topic that I was really interested in talking about because, I've known for a long time, like the importance of actually being able to do more than work because you obviously have to be healthy first. And, I've always been guilty of working too much. And actually, what really made this a permanent part of my life is that back in like 2005, 2004, 2005, during the boom, the previous real estate boom. Well, we've had a couple since, but anyway, it was a really good time in the real estate market. I was a mortgage broker at the time, and all I did was worked, and I quit all my sports, all my exercise. People were always bringing me food, like was not even eating healthy, and I had some serious health issues, put on a lot of weight, um, got to a point where I was having liver issues and blood panels weren't good, and cholesterol, like all kinds of bad stuff. And so it kind of it became like a harsh reality that something needed to change or I wasn't going to survive. And so for me, it took going to that extreme to actually change things up.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting, sometimes going through these like extreme like life events that really forces you to create change in your life, right? Like for me, like I didn't really get to the point where like I had those same like health issues, but it was interesting because I feel like I when I was growing up, I think I was for the longest time I was the type of person that very much was like focused on business and focused on work. I think that was kind of the environment that I grew up in. Like my parents immigrated here from China, and they really had to work hard to make the life that we have today. And I'm super grateful and thankful to them for that. But that was the only example I had like growing up is just like you have to work, work, work. And it did ultimately have like a negative impact on me. And I mean, I've shared before on this podcast that like I was previously married, was married for about 5 years. I had dated my ex. We had been together for about 18 years. And then we got divorced. And upon reflecting on the various reasons why, like one of the things I realized was a lot of the times was I kept on like my focus wasn't on the marriage, it wasn't on the relationship, it was focused on building the business, trying to be successful in my career. And I wasn't doing the other things I needed to make sure that I was growing holistically. And I shared on another podcast that we did previously, I think it was might have been with Jeff Fargo, where I talk about the importance of growing, uh, the importance of growing by eating pies, right? And it's not like the sweet pies that we eat, but it stands for like growing physically, growing intellectually, growing emotionally, and growing spiritually. And that's something I learned like going through my divorce and like recovering from that, was that like I wasn't growing in any one of those ways. I was just focused on growing, on just working in business, right? But I realized that like the importance of growing yourself holistically means that you're filling yourself up, right? And I think what one thing I realized was that I couldn't give anymore to anything else. Like I couldn't give to the marriage, I couldn't give to anything because I wasn't filling myself up. And that was like a valuable lesson that I learned through that process.
Yeah, well, yeah, and you hear that constantly that you gotta, put on the oxygen mask first before you can, help anyone else. But honestly, you got to put it on to help yourself. Like
Yeah.
we don't, yeah, we get super focused on, like for me, it was just so career driven, and just business was really good, and just hadn't, had recently, it was new, right? I was in the process of getting married at the time and everything, and it would that life was new to me. I was used to being on my own and just getting after it, and making room for someone in your life in the heat of a market like that was something that I didn't really, I don't know, I guess, know how to do, or take the accountability. And I think the stress of personal life, as well as obviously just running hard with the business, and just neglecting my health, it all snowballed. And so really, like, what helped me is, I mean, I guess they always talk about, you don't really get it, or it doesn't really happen until you hit rock bottom. And being at the doctor's office one day, when they were actually, doing this liver scan that they had to do. I think that was probably the third or fourth time I had gone in for that, but they were checking it like once a month. It was it was absolutely just horrible. I mean, like, literally not being able to go upstairs. Like, it was getting really bad. And so they sent me to a medical diet, this place here that it's like a medical diet place. And that was life changing. I mean, I got my first 20 pounds off, and then a good friend of mine got me into boxing. And so I started going to this professional boxing gym. I wasn't going to be a professional boxer. I was just training with them. They had classes and stuff for workouts and stuff. And so started training in boxing, and a combination of the diet and the boxing, I actually lost 80 pounds in about a year and a half. And, I promised myself, once I took the weight off, that I would never, let myself go or be like that again. And so I
Yeah.
made, like, for me, it was a morning routine. Everybody, has, everybody's different when they can exercise or when they can do what they need to do.
Yeah.
For the longest time, until recently, all these gurus would preach morning routine, morning routine, morning routine. And in the last year, you've seen people backtracking from that and saying, no, no, you do you, which I was always hard on people, because, like, I mean, I guess you have to decide to be a morning person, but decide or not decide, I'm a morning person. Like, my only quiet time each day is, from 5:30 in the morning to 8:30 in the morning. That's the time that I try to do me, exercise, breakfast. I'm not really one to meditate, but kind of sit there and kind of go over your goals and stuff and your affirmations, and just kind of just ease into your day. Just get your routine, get going, and then just kind of ease your way into your day. And so for me, it's been, a morning routine. How about for yourself?
I think it's also like I like starting off my morning with kind of what a little bit of what you talked about is, I'm not a I'm not big on meditation either. I've tried meditating. It's really not for me. But what I do enjoy in the morning is just a short period of practicing gratitude, and just kind of reflecting on, all the positives that are going on. Because if you really take the time to pause and reflect, no matter what situation you're in, like, I'm willing to bet there is something that you can be grateful for, even if it's just, hey, I woke up this morning and, like, thank you God, because I can breathe this fresh air this morning, right? Because a lot of people might not even be able to say that.
Right.
Heck, I know, like, yeah, I've been to China and I've been to Beijing. Their pollution and their smog is horrible, so
Yeah.
they might not be able to do that like we have it here in the states. So I like to start my morning just with a gratitude practice, and then, me being kind of the engineer, I there's something very satisfying about being able to check off the box. And so one thing that found helpful for myself is I'd like to lay out, like, the things that I need to do for the day, and then just work through that. And I think that that actually helps me to get very organized and just make sure that, like, I can think about everything that needs to be done and prioritize accordingly.
Do you do that on a notepad?
Yeah, it's I tried doing it before on, like, my computer, and I'm all about, like, new school stuff, but for some reason when it comes to to-do lists, there's just, something a lot more effective for me about writing it old school on a.
Right. So I've been getting away from that because I've been trying to use this electronic one we have, and you could see I haven't been keeping up with it. It just hasn't. been good.
I don't know about you. I wonder for me if it's something about like the tactile, like the memory of like actually taking the time to write it out. Like I feel like there's some kind of connection that's made with my brain that allows me to kind of remember it better than if I'm just typing it on a
Well, they
computer.
say there is. I mean, scientifically, they say there is. There's also that satisfaction of crossing it off.
Yeah.
Like digitally, is just not as exciting. Um, but yeah, I need to, I really like, I guess for me, what's been hard is that I had this whole, I don't know if I ever told you about this herniated disc in my neck a few years ago,
No.
and it really affected my right side. I'm right-handed. So it's interesting. I really didn't write good before, but even though I recovered from that, like there's still just like my writing, it's horrible. Like it's hard to like write and read it. Like I can't read my own writing
Hmm.
after. So it's like that's one of the reasons I was looking at trying to be more digital, but it's like I really need to just slow down, take a deep breath, and continue to write it because it works for me.
Yeah.
But I got to do it daily. It used to be the daily thing, and that thing would live on my desk, and everybody knew about that. And then, I tried to be more techie, and you know me. Um, but yeah, as far as the other thing you're talking about, like with gratitude and stuff, like for me, that's something that I usually do at night. I mean, it makes sense in the morning. You're obviously grateful to have woken up. But I mean, for me, I do have like a gratitude journal, and that is something that I practice at night.
No, I think that's really great, and I think like yeah, to your point earlier, like it doesn't matter like whether you're a morning person, an evening person, when you do some of these practices. I think the important thing is that like you do take the time to do it because I think it adds, we kind of live in a society like especially here in California and the Bay Area. It's like the impulse and the mindset is just to move and to move and to move. Especially here being in Silicon Valley, it's just like yeah, run that rat race. And I think oftentimes we get so busy like we don't take the time to pause and doing things like gratitude, whether you do in the morning or in the evening. It forces you to take the time to pause, and I think pausing is good because it helps us to reflect. It helps us to be, and I think through reflection we become more like self-aware, and I think that helps you to like helps us as individuals to grow and to get better.
No, totally.
I want to go back to something earlier that you said because I'm curious because you made a comment that like with your previous marriage like it was kind of happened through the period of where the market was booming, right? And you found it hard to balance like having somebody else in your life with the market booming. Like, what do you feel like your attention was like really focused on at that point? Like, what really drove you? What made it hard for you to like throw somebody else into the equation?
I didn't know how to not be working.
Mm,
I didn't know how to not be on the phone. I didn't know how to actually sit back and relax and breathe. So there was no. It was pedal to the metal. There was like no slowing down, and so it was weird. I was uncomfortable if I wasn't working. I was kind of lost.
do you feel like that was driven a lot by like in like your mindset? Do you feel like your mindset at that time because like was being driven by just like what wanting to chase after the dollar to some degree, or what was
Well, yeah,
driving
I
you?
mean, coming out of college, like just getting the opportunity. It was funny because obviously pre-inflation, my big goal, coming out of high school or out of college was to make $100,000 in a year. That was a
Hmm.
lot back then. Remember, I'm a little older than you, but I was really like, I don't know, we were just taught to be focused, to be successful. One of my best friends, his brother-in-law was a lender for Bank of America, and he crushed it. He dressed nice. He drove this BMW. It's like it was that image, and being in your 20s, that's obviously now things are different where I'm at in life and my experience, but it's that whole shiny lifestyle was exciting. And what's interesting is that once I got into it, within a handful of years, and I'm not really one to share too much with numbers and stuff, but within a handful of years, I mean, I was making over six figures in a month,
Hmm.
and you know that just that just life just changed. Like money's never changed me or who I am. Like I've always been generous, humble, hardworking. Like the person that I am has never changed because of that. But that hunger and thirst for success, um, that's what's hard to slow down. Is that, so it's like when you build that momentum, it's like pedal to the metal. And like just like in high school they don't teach you about credit or budgeting money or anything like that. They definitely don't teach you about balance, right? Like balance of life. Like we're getting educated, right, to go get a job, to go make money. Like there isn't a lot of talk. Like for instance, like there's different gurus over the years that talk about you need to have all the like for instance, there's a wheel on the wall behind me, right?
Yeah.
like like each handle represents like work, spirituality, health, like family, right? So it's like you've probably seen that before. There's the spokes of the wheel, or there's people make these little graphs or whatever. Well, nobody really taught me that. And so you just, I don't know, like with me, I just kind of go with it. So I just I went with the momentum of the business, and then I just didn't know how to not be, because I became so accustomed to that what we would do, which I did really enjoy, is that I would work really hard, but then I would take time off and go on vacation, which is kind of shocking because I did that more back then than I do now. It's like, part of it obviously was obviously being that affluent and not having, so many businesses and not having, a child or anything. I mean, it was just different back then when you're, young, and you don't really have any overhead and you're making that kind of income. You're investing and doing everything else, but there's still money left over to really, enjoy. And so it was a different time. But yeah, love Hawaii and different places I traveled to. And I believed in taking a good vacation every quarter. Yeah, that was the goal. Taking at least a week every quarter. It wouldn't always balance out to being on the quarter. It might be a couple in
Right.
the summer or whatever,
Right.
but yeah.
Well, I mean, it's you kind of opened a can of worms with the whole educational system there with me, because I mean I totally agree. Like, I mean, when you talk about like education and degrees, I'm, not to brag, I just feel like I could probably put myself up there with the best. Like, but it's interesting. Like if I think back and reflect now, I'm like, how many of those AP courses that I took in high school, right? Or how many of those like degrees that I have, and I have quite a few of them, like were helpful. Like none really. Like, hey, yeah, I took AP chemistry and I took AP calculus. Do I ever use it these days? No. And like, it is one thing that I wish, I mean, we're getting a lot off topic, but like, it is one of those things I wish like our educational system here would like focus on a little bit more, is like really teaching those life skills, like when you're starting off. Cause I mean, I see it with kids now here in the Bay Area too, where it's like all they do is like, okay, I got to load up on AP classes. I got to do like 10 AP classes by the time I hit high school or some ridiculous thing like that. And then it's like, well, once you get into the real world, what are the more important skills? It's not how many AP classes did you take? It's not it's not how many degrees you have. It's, can you relate to people? Are you self-aware enough to be able to understand your emotions, understand why you're feeling that way, understand, how to manage your emotions, right? And manage other people's emotions, life skills, how to manage your money. And it's just like, we don't teach enough of that. And I I worry about, how that's going to impact us going forward as a society.
Yeah, that is scary. And I mean, just also just for the record, I mean, obviously you super educated yourself. I actually dropped out and took a great job up in Seattle. And I just, like lower division college was great, learned a lot, but upper division was a lot of long lectures on theory and such, and not on practice, and I just couldn't hang with that.
Yeah.
I My education for myself was a lot of reading. I'm a fast reader and I love to read, and then of course now with Audible, it's been a little different because you can listen to books too. But what I was going to say though is that growing up in school and everything, they equated education to a paycheck, and
Yeah.
that's not the case. I mean, like I dropped out and I probably make a lot more income than people that have multiple degrees, and it just is not to knock the education system, but it just you're seeing it now more and more that it's finally not being preached as, hey, you need school. Because I believe in, like, you know, as one of like the life balances, or we're referring to today, I think you need to, also, work your mind, whether it's college or reading or whatever. Like, I think it's important to absorb as much as you can and become as knowledgeable as you can. But I just, I'm glad that society's finally realizing that it's not the one size fits all college, right? Like, it's like I have a broker's license, right? A real estate license, I have a general contractor's license. I mean, these are vocational things, right? Where you go study for that and you need that to do what you do. I'm all about that. I'm happy to do that. I think, like, obviously, if you're going to be a doctor, if you're going to be a lawyer, like, I feel like there's a lot of things out there that require education. And I think that, if you know what you want to do, then obviously, commit to it and go all in on getting educated for that. But I don't know. I think at some point the whole education system might change. I think that, if people can start getting routed towards where they want to go, and if they don't know where they want to go, then maybe they pause on education until they do know where they want to go. But anyway, I'm getting way off subject. I just wanted to share based on what you said, because I think it's important.
Well, and I think it's one thing I do want to relate back to this topic of like balancing your life. And I think it's like one of the key skills that I wish I had learned sooner. And that like I think it's important for anyone, regardless of what industry you're in or whatever, is the ability to stay curious and to just be curious. I feel like, growing up for me, it's like, yeah, you take all these classes, you're taught to just solve like problems. You give a problem, you do the math equations behind it, and you come up with a solution, right? But it doesn't really teach you how to be curious, how to ask engaging questions. And I think that's something that is probably going to be more important to anyone, to be successful in their life, and in their business, is to be curious. Be curious about yourself. Be curious about the people around you. Be curious about how you think about things, and see like how you can improve upon that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Totally agree. I guess circling back to, I guess it does relate. We could go pretty deep with all these topics, but circling back to like the whole thing with balance. I mean, I kind of touched on vacation and such, and it's sometimes people talk about, well, financially, it's so expensive to travel and everything. I mean, it doesn't have to be no fancy expensive trip. Like, I'm perfectly fine with just going on a road trip somewhere, and just staying. You know what I mean? Like, people don't realize, like, well, I guess people do realize, but I'm just saying a lot of people don't realize just how much there is to do and see, in our state, in our surrounding states. I mean, and a vacation doesn't need to be even traveling far. Like, just spending some time, here at a beach house or something, or camping or whatever. You just need to be able to get your brain to disconnect. I mean, maybe if it's even visiting family in another place,
Yeah.
like, it's always fun to visit family, and then while you're visiting family, take some time to do some fun stuff or do some different things. One thing I like to do is, like, on these conferences, when I can, these conferences are in these great places. I'll take a couple extra days, like,
Yeah.
like, for instance, I mean, not that Vegas is like a vacation destination, but like what we did in after the conference last year. We took a couple days to just for some R&R there in Vegas. I mean, I know Vegas is not really what you think about for R&R, but it was nice to get some food, some good food, hang out, have some fun, take it easy, watch some football. Just like, going to Florida, like, I won't be able to on this trip, but a lot of times, I'll spend a couple extra days there and do stuff. So, like, I got to go to Shareholders in May.
Yeah.
That's in Orlando. It's at a
Yeah.
nice resort. Last year when I went, I took a couple days afterwards to kind of explore a little more, because over the years, like, the real estate events have always been focused on Disney World or in Disney World, and I really hadn't been outside of that much. So it was nice to
I wouldn't complain
actually.
about that, man. With
Well,
a conference at Disney World.
yeah,
I get
you
what you're
reminded
saying,
me
but I
who
would.
I'm talking to. You reminded me who I'm talking to. But no, I'm not hating on Disney, just for the record. I don't want everybody to like unfollow me now. But no, what I'm saying though is, it was because, I like to get to know different areas too. And so it's nice to know that there's life outside of Disney when you're in Florida.
There's life outside of Disney? Wow. I don't know. For me, if I go to Orlando, it's all about Disney. But I mean, it is important. I think I like that. I like that trick that you mentioned is like when you go somewhere for a conference, like yeah, extend out a couple of days. Again, it goes back to just being curious. Like there's so much to learn about a city or a new environment that you're in that goes beyond of just you being inside of a hotel room. Um, and the other thing is like, yeah, I mean, outside of like making the time to like take vacations and stuff, like when we talk about balance of your life, it could also be very simple things that you can do on a day to day basis. Like for me, one thing I'm horrible about is getting up out of my seat and chair here because I'm always so focused on just like being in front of my laptop and working away. But there is something, so I'm really thankful for my little dog Sesame, because he needs to take potty breaks 3 4 times a day, and it's actually it's really helpful. Like it interrupts your pattern throughout the day where you're just so focused on the screen, and it forces me to like get up, take the time, even if it's like 10 15 20 minutes, go outside and take a walk. And it's like don't bring your phone, right? Because that won't bring balance to your life when you're taking a walk. But don't bring your phone, just take 10 minutes and just go out, get some fresh air. And like I found that's been super helpful. It allows me to like refocus. It allows me to stop thinking about work and think about something else, maybe something that brings me joy, like Disneyland.
Yeah, yeah. I got to remember next time to be careful when I mention Disney and how I handle saying or talking about Disney. No, I agree with you. Like leaving the phones behind, that's something I need to detach more from. And I really do enjoy it. Some people think I love being on the phone day and night, but it becomes a habit.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing that's unhealthy with time wasted is, lately, because we've been doing more stuff with social media, it's like you get on there to check stuff and then you find yourself surfing. And that's like the biggest waste of time for me. And it's a time suck. And I feel like sometimes it gets a little out of control. Um, Too much curiosity there. Got to tame that curiosity. But yeah, that's not good. That's not good for the whole balance. Um, so yeah, no devices and getting some fresh air. That's smart. Um, yeah, like when I'm getting my exercise in the morning and stuff, my phones are on DND, and I won't check anything really unless I'm trying to make sure my kid's out of bed for school or something. But I try to just focus on non-electronic gadgets of any kind.
Yeah, and it's super important, like in like to kind of slowly develop like these habits over time, right? I think it's interesting because like when I think about like business and we talk about like investing and whatnot, like it's super clear. Like you put in an investment today, and everything that you do today helps you kind of build who you want to be like tomorrow, a year from now, 5 years from now, right? And it's interesting because I feel like sometimes we don't apply the same principles when it comes to like other things in our life that really bring balance, right? Like the things you do today, whether it's making sure you get in that workout, whether it's 30 minutes or 60 minutes, right? Making sure you cut things out of your diet that are like caffeine or carbs or things that could hurt you. um, we sometimes forget that like those small actions that we take today could have a big impact on us like a year, 5 years, 10 years down the road. My dad always had this saying. He told me this saying, and it's kind of stuck with me. He's like, the things that you're doing in your 20s, this was a while ago, I'm not in my 20s anymore, but the things you do in your 20s, like to your body and your mind, like influence how you're going to feel when you're in your 30s, right? And it's the same, like the things that you do when you're in your 30s, whether it's diet, exercise, whatever it is going to impact how you're going to feel and who you're going to be in your 40s. And so that's kind of a mindset that I've learned from him that I'm applying to my life today.
Yeah, no, those are wise words, and obviously we would all love to be able to go back and do it again, right?
Oh no, absolutely. If I had a time machine, I would absolutely do that again. But I think it's like for those listening, like if you haven't done it, like don't beat yourself up. Like there are things like for myself also I wish I could go back and redo. But then there's also the side of me that has realized like, hey, do I really want to? Like maybe not, because there are experiences that I have learned through the process of making those mistakes that I would never go back and trade for a chance to redo. right? Because it's, yeah, I made a lot of mistakes, and it isn't the way that I wanted to handle it at the time, but it's like I've learned so much from it. I've grown so much from it, and it influences and impacts like who I am today and what I'm doing now to, make myself better going forward.
Yeah, and there's something to be said about the experiences not being regrets, but being experiences that build you. And it's I think it was actually looking back, I think when there's been a couple moments, and I think after the divorce, that was one big one, and I think after the real estate market crash, I mean, those were two moments where I think I was really hard on myself, and I didn't realize that some of the failures or some of the challenges were part of what you need to go through, or experiences that educate you, give you more knowledge, make you stronger. Um, just they really just round who you are, and they're like stepping stones to being
They
your
are.
best
Yeah.
self.
Yeah.
And like you have to go down that path. Before those things happened, there was this assumption that we had to perform in perfection. Like you can't make bad decisions or make mistakes. You can't mess things up. It's like it was almost like if you mess things up, you got to start over type of thing. And
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. Without going too deep here, it's just I'm just glad that I was already in my 30s when that happened, but I'm glad I got to the point where I could accept the experiences, the mistakes, whatever, and learn from them and quit having so much regret,
Yeah.
because the regret was a killer. The regret that like your mind spins, like my mind would not stop spinning until I accepted it.
Yeah, yeah, like use it, like focusing on regret, like it. Yeah, you start digging a hole in a trench for yourself that sometimes it's so hard to get out of,
Should
and
have, I could
yeah,
have.
could have,
Why
should have, could
didn't
have, would have.
I? Oh
Yeah,
my gosh, I was right there. Heck, I still do that sometimes with you. Like recently, I've like there's been a couple situations where I've been like, why didn't I do this? Why didn't I do that? It's life, man.
it is, it
Now
is.
it takes me less time to get to that acceptance point. None of us are perfect, even with all the experience we have. We'll all go down those downward spirals at times mentally. It's just human nature, right? But I feel like this prepares you or arms you to be better each time. You
Oh,
know,
absolutely, and it's that process. Yeah, we're never going to be perfect. Like we're emotional beings. Like we're going to react emotionally, but it's one thing I've started to learn is how, like, to your point, like how do you respond when you do, like, when you do make a mistake, or you do, like, react emotionally to something. And like going I want to circle back and probably wrap up with what we talked about at the beginning, which is taking the time to reflect and doing gratitude. But then the other thing that I also find important is, like, and I do this at the end of the day, is kind of recap my checklist at the end of the day, which is like, okay, so this is what I had planned. How did I do according to that? Did I check off everything? If I didn't, like, okay, what happened there? And I think it's that mindset shift is super impactful. Like rather than beating myself up for by saying, okay, oh shoot, I didn't do like these things that I said I was going to do. The mindset shift of like, okay, I didn't do it. Like, why didn't I do it? And what stopped me, and what can I do better if this situation were to come up next time? And I think taking the time to reflect on that kind of arms you and helps you build, so that next time you face a similar situation, you kind of have that training, that tool, the skill set and the tools to, like, say, okay, let me pause for a second. This happened before. Um, how did I respond to it last time? Why did I do that? And then what can I do differently this time?
no, totally agreed. And I mean, how about the guilt of missing a workout?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
there's nothing. It's just so frustrating, especially like for me because I love exercise. I love to work out. I love to play sports. That's a painful one.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
tonight I got to fly. I'm gonna miss my soccer game. I'm really bummed about that. But like, there's not. It's just it is. I just
It is. Yeah.
gotta not lose sleep over it. Just accept it and move on. There'll be
Yeah.
another game on Sunday.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I this has been, I think, just a great topic, and great conversation. And I, hopefully, for those listening out there, you found like some helpful mindsets, some encouragement, as you're kind of going through your own journeys right now. So as we wrap up, Shane, like anything else you want to share?
I think that just to recap is that you don't have like you don't have to fall into like somebody else's routine. You just have to create your own routine. And I know this word, whether we're talking business, whether we're talking about consistency, that word always comes up. You just have to build something you can be consistent with. Like if you really want to include, going to the gym in your life, like if that's part of what you want to do, then commit to X amount of days. And if you're just starting brand new and you haven't been doing it, then be easy on yourself. Be like, oh, I'm going to go once a week. I mean, just whatever you're going to set that's going to be your routine and your balance. Don't be too hard on yourself and try to set up something realistic that you can actually stay
Yeah.
engaged in some sort of schedule. Because if you have an unrealistic schedule, then you're going to miss like half of it. And it's not even going to be a routine. So, and yeah, and don't worry about people that say it has to be in the morning. Because I mean, like I said, I'm a strong morning person, but some people choose not to be morning people, and that is a choice. I'm going to leave you off with that, Michael. Being a morning person is a choice.
It absolutely is a choice, and I think like it's, and I'll close with this thought is just like it is important to like to experiment to figure out what works best for you, and it's okay that like if you think you're a morning person and you try to do something in the morning, and you find yourself not being able to do it, hey, maybe you're just not a morning person, but
Oh, that is complete BS. No, that is not why. I will disagree with you, but that's fine. We're going to agree to disagree.
well, I mean, it's just like you can choose to do something else, I guess is my point, right? Like
But you have it, but it's a
it's
choice.
a choice. It's a
It's
choice. You
as long as
can
the
you
choice.
yeah, you can like, and maybe your choice is then to try to do it in the evening. Like I guess my point is like try try to do what you like, you set goals for yourself and try to execute towards them. And
Yeah.
like try and fail fast, I think is what I'm trying to get to.
That's a good
Like
point. And if you're
like
not sure, maybe I guess what you're trying to say is that if you do it in the morning and it just isn't feeling right, then maybe try doing it in the evening.
and try doing it in the evening, like figure out what works for you. And I think
Right.
it's a learning process, right? And you learn a little bit more about yourself, what really works for you versus what you think in your head might work for you. And then you start learning more about yourself too, and that might also influence how you make future choices and decisions.
I like that. I like that. Well, and my last thing is, even though I hate this bike, the Peloton,
Yeah,
I am on it at least 3 to 4 times a week. So
yeah.
anybody out there listening, if you do have a Peloton, DM me so we can connect, so we can
There you go.
challenge each other, because the competitive nature makes me love it. So please reach out if you do have a Peloton and let me know what your handle is so that we can connect on there.
Just be ready for a competition. All right, guys. Well, thanks so much for joining us on today's episode of the Top Producing Zone podcast. We appreciate your support, and we'll catch you on the next episode.